There's a chance that it's live right now, though I can't tell. Because it's been a while since I've done this. I think it's live now. Okay, I think it's live. If you can see me, or I guess see the game, you can hear me. I hear myself, so I'm gonna mute that. But I think we should be all set. I am live. I see people saying, good, very good. Yeah, it's been a while since I've done one of these. And we're gonna take it slow, give people a little bit of time to filter in here. Technically, we're a couple minutes early, even still. How do the audio levels sound? Am I audible, quiet, good? Yeah. I spent a lot of time getting my setup all correct and making sure it sounded good in a test stream. And then Windows update happened and everything got completely reset and messed up, and I had to try and scramble today to get it back again. So just my luck. But Windows updates are well known for ruining my computer and causing all kinds of problems for me. Mic sounds good, and you can't hear any music yet. Let me try and start a little background music just to see. The game itself is kind of quiet, I know. If I need to change that volume level, I will. Hopefully you can maybe hear a little dark piano from Adventure Out of Time in the background. You can't. Obviously, I just need to fix the volume level. It could be too quiet. It looks too quiet. Let me just boost it a bit. And you can tell me if I'm like blasting your eardrums out now or something. Not a bad turnout so far. Now piano, you hear it. Okay, good. Very good. So, it has been a while since I've done one of these. I want to say the last time I did any kind of stream at all, Cafe Concerto, you definitely hear Cafe Concerto. The last time I did any one of these at all, I think, was 2024, before the Voyage even. Um, just got kind of worn out on it all. Needed a bit of a break from the streams, but I figure I have had a year off and I'm ready to start streaming some games here and there, especially if I think they're worth sharing. Yeah, the Adventure Out of Time soundtrack is like the perfect background audio for anything, I think. You can always just leave it running for hours and it'll just add something to the room. Hello, Haley. Yeah, so we've got a bunch of people here, and it is 5. I don't know how long I'm going to run today, so I do want to try and get started sooner than later. We are going to explore the bow and the stern. I don't know how much time we'll give each section. I want to try and focus on them both equally. That being said, I think there's more interesting stuff to see in the stern section, but we'll give them both their due. I also probably will play on easy. It just makes everything a lot more visible, as you'll see. I can go to realistic just to give you an idea of how dark it actually is, but with easy, you really get to see the full ship and everything. And I might also get distracted because I'm always in a constant battle against my cats who try to chew at my cords and brush up against my feet, and it's very distracting. So if I ever just like go quiet for a moment, know that it's probably because I'm trying to keep them from unplugging any of the number of cords here that are very important. Uh, very, very important for the stream. Yeah. Hello, though. A lot of people. I didn't expect, since this is my first stream in a while, I thought there maybe would be like 3 or 4 people here. So I'm really happy to see a lot of people. Also, one other thing I want to note, and hopefully this works. For this, I have the deck plans here as well, which I hope you can see. Let me know if you're not seeing deck plans at all. But I thought it would be fun to kind of cross-reference the deck plans as we go and see what all we can find. I really don't know how I'm going to set this up. Because I want to see the chat, but I need to see the plans, but I need to see the game. I think that I need a third monitor, and this is just more proof of that. Anyway, though. I think we're all set. We've got a good number of people, and like I said, I don't know how long this will run exactly, so I'm just going to go ahead and get started. And again, we're going on easy just to see more of the ship. Now, to just go around and explore whatever we want, there are a couple objectives that I need to fulfill first. So I'm going to first focus on just getting those objectives so that the operational limit timer will stop and we can just explore as we want. And from there, we will then have a look around the bow. You'll get to see some of it now. I can talk about what I'm scanning, I guess. I should tell you a little bit about this game, though, itself. This game was created using the Magellan scans of the actual wreck. So it's not just like someone created a 3D model of the ship and just put it in this environment for you to explore. This is like actually created from scans of the real ship. It's probably the closest most of us will ever get to actually seeing the real ship, given, you know, going on one of these expeditions and piloting an ROV is exceptionally rare. And after a certain incident with a submarine a while back, I don't think there's really that many manned trips to the wreck anymore. You probably know exactly what I'm talking about. So yeah, we're over the bow of the ship right now, and again, I'm just quickly scanning off objectives so that we don't have a time limit and we can take our time and explore. But the premise of this is that you get to control an ROV as if you were an ROV operator down here at the wreck site. And there's already some things you can notice, right? That you might not have really ever put together just from watching documentaries. Like, this bow section really is broken, slanting forward quite heavily. I remember the first time I loaded this game up and approached the bow, I was surprised at just how much of like an upward slope it is this way. Because I think the bow itself should have been raised quite high, right? Compared to the promenade over there. It should have been like all the way up here, and maybe even higher. So just the degree to which the entire bow section is sagged downwards here surprised me a lot. Catching up on some of comments, because the chat's actually quite active. Yeah, the missing railing over there that fell off. I think we might even be able to fly down and see where the railing fell to once we scan everything else here. We need to find the plaques, which I think are going to be up the bridge. The uptake casing of the grand staircase, I think, is just talking about the staircase itself. And it calls them winches with their lifeboat, Davis. Which are those? It's going to be one of those. Yeah, here's the plaques. I guess I can mention the plaques while I'm here. A lot of the previous people who came down to explore the wreck site left these plaques with some words on them to memorialize the wreck. This is right where the wheelhouse would have been. You can still see some of the frame of the wheelhouse here. And there's the ship's wheel itself, where it would have sat, at least, what's left of it. I think it's called the The rotor. I will warn you, I'm not the most versed in like nautical terminology or 1912 machinery, so a lot of this is going to be kind of guesswork on my part. I found some cool things exploring that we'll talk about. Taking a moment to read some of the comments while I'm slowly moving. The ROVs are quite slow. Oh no. I now fear that this winch that it's trying... I know, it's gonna be the cargo... It's gonna be down here. I've gone to the wrong area. Not talking about the David. Yeah, the bow section is pretty recognizable. You can make out a lot of detail that I am very eager to explore as soon as I scan these things. My one complaint about this game so far is that every time you have to scan before you can just freely explore. I wish there was an option once you did it once to just go into the free exploration mode. Because it's a little annoying sometimes when you come back having to just scan everything again. The stern is in this too. We will explore the stern. I think it's my preferred area of exploration because it's really something. We will get to that in a little bit. You can see some real interesting things here already too. Like for example, this ladder here was inside of the casing of the funnel, which you can still pretty clearly make out in here. This would be the first funnel casing. And there's a ladder that would have been situated on the inside of it, I guess for maintenance access. I know the fourth funnel had a ladder that you could climb to the top. And it's just cool seeing that in this one too. I doubt anyone ever would have used that during the voyage though, given this area would have been pumping up smoke from the boilers. But just a really cool thing to see. These are the openings for like the Marconi room and the officer's lavatory, I think, and the elevator gear room. You can see here is the grand staircase. Kind of funny that the Adventure Out of Time grand staircase music gets started. Let me get these last scans out of the way, then we can actually start. I didn't scan all the winches. I guess that's fitting though, because I want to start at the front and come back. The new documentary, I've heard things about it. I haven't watched it. I've heard though that there's some controversy about it. I don't know the details, but some people aren't all that pleased from what I've heard. It's amazing, okay. I might need to seek it out then. I always think Titanic documentaries are so weird, right? Like, they're either really awesome or really, really bad, it seems like, and there's very rarely in between. And it's just funny. Yeah, that's what I'd heard, that some of the new theories that came out of it, like the brake theory, are peculiar. They think that the ship just disintegrated? Now I have to find it and watch it. Where's the last scan point for this patch? There you are. There's one more. I knew I was almost practicing for this stream because I wanted to be able to find these quickly so I could focus on the interesting stuff. I knew there would be like one point that I just forgot about.
First day on the job is over.
Okay. So now we're in free mode. Now there's no timer. We can explore. So let's start all the way at the front. There's some interesting stuff to see. So this was made by exterior scans of the ship. So if you try and get too close to things or try and go inside the ship, it falls apart, right? But you still can see some detail in there from the scans, right? Like you can see part of the inner deck there. And this would have been the very forwardmost cargo hatch. So I think on that side of it would have been. Well, you know what? Why am I trying to guess? We can just look, can't we? Let's see. As long as this is still working. Are you seeing? I need to open the deck plans, I think, to see them. Okay, there we go. What was on the other side of this hatch? The number one hatch that we're at, and if we go down, we can see. Yeah, I thought so. It leads right into the windlass room that would have had the gear for the anchor, right? Which you can still see some of the upper sides of those gears scattered around here. So you can get a sense that that room still looks like it's quite intact. Oh, I need to change the camera back. You can get a sense that that room looks like it's still quite intact down there. So if only we could go inside, right? My controller stopped working now? Hang on. It's my luck. Dream difficulties. I'm telling you, it probably was one of my cats. I can still use the mouse. I don't know the controls, though. Okay, that's easy enough. So yeah, you can get a sense that that room still seems like it's down there. And I think that's one of the cool things, is even though you can't see all the detail of things like that, you can make enough out to make some inferences about stuff you might not have known before. That's another hatch that leads down into that same windlass room. See if you can get a closer look at it at all. Not really, you can see that there's some stuff hanging down inside Rusticles. Where's my chat? I need to see my chat. So I noticed one thing that I thought was interesting. Whoops. Oh no, how do I go into... Hang on. I go into first person Z. All the time I played on my controller, so I'm having to learn. Now the controller stopped working. So the nameplate would have been somewhere here, and it's obviously too low res to really tell, but I know they say the nameplate is still visible. I just wonder if someone couldn't find it wherever it should be. But on the other side of the ship, I found something in my own exploration that I thought was interesting that I want to show off. Plus we can keep doing that. We can get a good look at just the bow section overall as we swing around. Really see how bent up a lot of the front of it is. How deep in the mud it is, too. I know they always talk about how it's buried up to the anchors, but like it literally is buried up to the anchor. And seeing just how deep that is, because you can count the decks, right? That's C deck. D deck, I think, is like right here. You can kind of see some portholes buried in there somewhere, and then that would be E deck that's just completely buried. That's a lot of the ship that's just buried in the mud and completely crushed there, right? Along the side of the ship here, too. Get a good sense of some of the scale. Controller's back now, good. I mean, these ROVs are pretty big. I don't know exactly how big they are. I'd be curious if anyone knows, but they're quite large themselves. But this here, I think, is interesting. It's not what I wanted to show you, but I'll mention it while we're here. So what are we seeing here? This is where, when the bow struck the bottom of the ocean, right, it had obviously the front portion here collapsed, and it kind of snapped along this point. And this looks to me like an area where something burst out, maybe trapped air or even just water. I mean, as the bottom compresses, right, that water still has to go somewhere, and it almost acts like a miniature explosion here. But what you can see is the frame of one of the gangway doors right here. And if I try and do this again and go back to our deck plans, we can have a look and see that that would be this E-deck gangway door right here on this side, right next to cabin 19A, which is a really weird cabin name now that I think about it. This would have led into this entrance here, and right above it is the third class open space. Right, so if we come back here and kind of look in, you can see some of the layout of the decks, right? Like up there would be the open space. This would be E-deck. You can even see, I think, the wall of that cabin, 19A, which would be right there. Then you can see down to F-deck there, too. And the scans obviously didn't capture all the detail inside. And, man, it just really makes me wonder what it looks like if in real life you flew an ROV right here and looked down. Like, how deep would you see? I thought this was really cool. I've always seen this feature on the scans before, but to be able to fly up close to it is really cool and see just some of the interior there. I really get a sense too just how big the ship is. Sitting in the water, I think the water would have been, water line would have been somewhere around here, I think. But even then, it still goes down so much, maybe even higher. Really hard to tell where exactly you are. I've tried to count the decks. Right, that's B deck, C deck. This is D deck. That's a porthole from E deck. There's one from F deck, which would mean G deck's probably right around like here. It's hard to tell where exactly the keel would start. I'm sure someone has something else they could use to more easily identify that. There's something hanging off the side of the ship here. It looks like a pipe. I bet I know what that is. I bet that's the pipe that runs along B deck. The B deck promenade has a bit of a pipe on the underside. It probably collapsed and fell down right there when it hit the bottom. Yeah, it is very ominous and eerie looking up at the wreck like this. If you play it late at night, it can be a game that kind of gives you the spooks, right? There's a lot of people here. I'm having trouble keeping up with the comments. Alright, this is what I really wanted to show. Because, to me, this is the only sign of anything that even resembles iceberg damage that I think I have been able to find. And I don't think that this itself is iceberg damage, per se, but I think it's ultimately here because of the iceberg damage below. So if you look along this line here, you can see that this plate is kind of bulged outwards. And it's very clear, this brighter white line that runs about to here that has a lot of filth and sediment and stuff kind of sitting in the crack where that plate is bent outwards. But you can see that this plate is clearly bent outwards, right? And I was wondering if that could be related to the iceberg, or if it was just from the buckling of the hull when it slammed into the bottom. And there's a few things that I've noticed about this, right? First of all, where exactly is this mysterious line in terms of its location on the ship? So if I go back to the plans here real quick, that's one of the main reasons I wanted to incorporate the plans as part of this. Honestly, was for this. That line runs to about the aft portion of where the first funnel would be, along the bottom. So this is where it got interesting for me, because that would be a line that runs somewhere along most of Boiler Room 6, terminating barely into the coal bunker near Boiler Room 5. and the iceberg damage on the ship did run from the peak tank along these holds. Boiler Room 6 was completely overwhelmed with water, but Boiler Room 5 barely flooded at all. There was reportedly just some water leaking into this coal bunker. So it perfectly lines up with that. What I am guessing is that this probably does stem from iceberg damage below that weakened the plates here such that when it slammed into the bottom, it buckled like this. And one of the supporting pieces of evidence I have for that, if I could get around to the other side, which will take a minute, is that there is no such buckling like that on the other side of the ship in the same place. It's just fully intact. That's the only such buckling like that I could find, actually. When getting an Adventure Out of Time stream. I would totally be down for doing another Adventure Out of Time stream. It has been a number of years, and that would be a lot of fun. It's just the devastation, too, of, like, the entire bridge is gone, the wheelhouse is gone. Like, I'm kind of just flying over it, not really taking that in, but it's just completely gone. Entirely. There's no remnants of it I can even see here. And some of the officers' quarters have just completely collapsed in on themselves. And I wonder if that wasn't caused from the funnel falling this way, as it reportedly did, and just completely smashing the deckhouse here. Just food for thought. I mean, there's so much you could look at here and wonder what happened to put it in that state, right? This is interesting, too. There's just a big inward burst right here. Nothing else like that. I don't know exactly what that's around. But it's just part of the ship just caved inwards right there. Anyway, what I'm trying to point out, though, is that if we come to this side and go down, you can see that there's not any bulging portion of the keel like that. Like what we saw on the other side. So my theory, at least, is that that's a sign of iceberg damage below in that spot. And that it helped contribute to the ultimate failure over there of that portion of the hull when it slammed into the bottom. This here is the open D-deck reception door. There's the closed one. They opened this door in the sinking to try and have lifeboats row up to it so that people could board from it, but that was ultimately a folly. By then, the water was almost up to this door, and they just left it open, and when the water came up to this door, it flowed in. By then, of course, the ship was doomed. It's not like that contributed in any meaningful way beyond maybe a matter of seconds in the final plunge, but I think it did perhaps contribute to the port list. You can see, like, open windows, too. One of the craziest things for me. You wonder if they were left open by their occupants, or if they just burst open. There's a window you can clearly see is shattered. My god, I could just float around for hours looking at things. There's so much detail here to take in. Sadly, you can't get into the A-deck promenade. I really wish you could. But we can see more. There's a door into the officers' quarters, and here's just the officers' quarters themselves. They're pretty well intact, all things considered. This is the expansion joint that has separated. First expansion joint. It's just completely separated across the whole of the bow. Some ice reportedly did get into the corridor on D-deck because of open portholes. Yeah, I know that story. someone, I forget who, reported coming out of their cabin to see what was going on and seeing chunks of ice laying on the floor there. I wonder if I could find that window and see if it is broken. I don't have time to go looking for that now, but you get the game yourselves, you could explore that later. So over here would be Captain Smith's room, completely collapsed in on itself. I know one of the famous things they used to film a lot was his bathtub. For whatever reason, just a noticeable artifact from his room. I think it's completely buried now, though, unless that's it. I don't think that's it, though. I think that's too far forward to be it. Yeah, I think it's buried under the rubble here now. Hey, that could be a portion of it underneath, maybe. I don't know. It's really hard to tell sometimes what you're looking at. Haven't you leave the water on? Emma Bucknell. Okay, Emma Bucknell's the one that found ice in the corridor. That's interesting. A lot of these windows on the boat deck flung open when it hit the ocean floor, I know. They've determined that because so many of them are opened. It's just not reasonable to expect, I think, that this many windows were left wide open. There's a portion that completely collapsed around that one boat deck stateroom. Alright, so now as we get farther aft, you really get to see how things start to fall apart. So, for example, this here is the opening the grand staircase. You can still see some of the frame of the stairwell, but a lot of it's collapsed. The deck itself has completely collapsed into the promenade below, around this area. That there would be the Cardeza's private promenade as well. It looks like that's beginning to buckle. Very interesting, too, that the frames have completely eroded or fallen off around here. I wonder why here specifically and not, like, back there. I guess it's just less structurally stable here, though. So, let's do a flyover of the grand staircase. Hello, Daniel. Jamie, I think that was that stateroom. Yes, you're absolutely correct. In fact, these here are the wireless tubes. I know that much. Yeah, so many years ago, multiple voyages back, we joked that whenever the pneumatic tubes for the wireless room were used, they would really tick off the occupant of this cabin because they would just make so much noise that the tubes are literally right next to his cabin. And that's kind of lived in infamy ever since with some of us. And the tubes are right there. It is interesting to see how they still are intact to this day, though. I guess it makes sense that the metal structure would last beyond the wooden frames around it, right? This is where the clock would have been. Obviously, there's absolutely nothing left of it now. I think it would have been, like, right there between the decks. You can kind of see some of the structure of the interior of the stairs, too. A little bit. You can maybe make out a chandelier hanging down right there. But the scans didn't capture the inside of the staircase all that much, of course. They really just captured from above the wreck. And then this side of the stairs is where the piano would have been. It's obviously completely buried beneath the rubble. Even when it's completely destroyed like this, though, it's still pretty recognizable if you know the bow of the ship, right? When we get to the stern section, I think you'll see what I mean when I say a lot more there is not recognizable. I've spent a lot of time figuring out what is what on the stern to some degree. There's a lot of interesting stuff to show there, and I'm more excited to see the stern than the bow, but the bow is more recognizable. This would have been the gymnasium. I think they had said the gymnasium itself was fairly intact until recently, but now you can really see that the whole roof is completely caved in on it. You can see some of the frame where the windows were still. And some of the frame back here. This is really intact, so you can even see the light right there. Which is interesting to me that it's collapsed more on that side than it has on the back when this entire aft portion has completely collapsed in on itself. But that's still standing strong. I think that's because... it's time to get the deck plans out again. I think that's because of where exactly this is situated. So that is situated alongside this funnel uptake. It would be like right around here is the gymnasium. Right here, say alongside the funnel casing. And when we go back, I'll show you that this funnel here, everything aft of it has completely collapsed down basically to the level of the boilers. But the casing itself is still very strong and still intact. It's just a giant steel honeycomb, I think I've seen it described as before. And that's very structurally sound. So as we kind of look aft, you can see that everything aft of it has collapsed around the area of the break. But the funnel casing itself is still very intact. You can even see down here where it starts to slope in this direction some, the casing. So that structure is probably why this wall is still here. I think that wall is literally built right on top of that honeycomb structure, whereas the others maybe aren't so much. Just so interesting there. This would have been a vent, I think, and here is where the second funnel itself would have sat. Now the interior of this funnel is quite different. It's got this middle portion here, and then some other kind of structure running along. I don't really know much about the engineering of the funnels, but you can see that it has that same kind of ladder inside as well. Philosophical in the comments. You're not wrong, though, yeah. The luxury and the utility and the futility, I guess, are all kind of just blended together now. This is, I think, the area of boat deck where they think the band played. Maybe. But there's a lot of debate about that, I know. A whole lot of debate. I don't want to get too deep into that topic now. But looking aft, you can see some of the frame around what would have been the foremost wall of the reading and writing room. And then the reading and writing room itself, you can still make some details out of, but it's mostly gone. Here would be the interior of the reading and writing room. I think this would have been part of what are they called? Alcove, maybe? Well, here in the plans, let me show that real quick. Here in the plans, it's referred to as an arched opening, but these arches had two flanking bits of wall that had this circular pattern near the top. If you can find a picture of the reading and writing room looking forward like that, it's pretty obvious, I think, that that's part of it. Which is crazy that it's still somewhat intact. Yeah, this right here is what I'm talking about. They had these little rounded opening bits near the tops of those, and then you can see some of the frame for what would have been that uh, arched opening. It's a weird name. I think. I guess the space beyond would be the alcove, but that's the archway into it. This would have been this little corner of the reading and writing room here. And then it was a weirdly shaped room. It would come aft and then stretch around the casing here, back towards that side. We can still make out some details. This would have been more of the ceiling. You can even see some of where the promenade would have curved around the edge right there of the reading and writing room. But down here, everything is collapsed in on itself so much that there's obviously nothing left to see. It's crazy to me because the aft section of the bow is so devastated. Like, I don't think I'm really capturing it well yet, just how devastated this portion is. Let's go all the way aft to really illustrate that. But it has collapsed basically as much as the stern section has. It's just propped up on top of the boilers. So if we sail aft, it'll give me a warning that I'm going too far. Or not. Ooh, did they patch that? Oh, they must have patched that, because before when I came out here, it said, oh, you're at the expedition limit. That's cool. So here are the boilers, which is quite the sight. Just boilers still sitting there with the ship sheared in half. And then you can see just like all of these decks. Every single deck above the boilers is collapsed into this space right here. Which is just nuts. Because there was a lot. Think about it. That's the first class lounge, 2 decks of cabins, first class dining saloon, a bit of Scotland Road and those crew spaces on E deck. I think 3rd class saloon. And then you get down into those engineering spaces on the bottom where the boilers now are. It's just crazy that all of that has been compressed into that. Insane. And there's really not much you can make out here beyond the boilers. I did find some interesting stuff back here too, like this. This is the steam pipe. So all the boiler rooms would have, I think, 2, which I think the second one's there. They'd have these steam pipes running through each boiler room that all the boilers themselves fed into. And those themselves would eventually feed into the engines, which would drive the ship and power the dynamos and stuff all the way in the stern. Even the boilers are all bent up too. Look at that, they're bent inwards. It's crazy the forces at play here. It reminds you of lasagna. So over here is kind of neat. The exterior wall of the ship bends outwards, and I thought it was interesting because if you come down here, you can kind of get a look into the skeleton almost. See some of the steel frames and some of the beams. I don't know what that is, but that looks maybe like it could have been a sea creature even. Some wires hanging down, I think. Another beam. If we look on the outside, we can see that that's B deck and this is C deck. You can imagine that this right here was someone's cabin on sea deck, most likely. One of the suites. If you count the portholes, I'm sure you could even figure out which one. But yeah, someone's cabin right here. Be funny if that was C-73. Then up here would be that B-deck cabin as well, though it's collapsed in on itself more. You can still kind of make out the interiors right around some of these windows, right? So it's not really recognizable as a cabin, of course, but just knowing that that was the floor of someone's room. Kind of sun star. We name it Archibald. This is the raised over the lounge, where they had the big electric chandelier that I think is called an electrolier. That would be on the inside of that. You wonder if it's still in there. I mean, that itself looks intact. Could be. The compass platform also would have sat on top. Now we're kind of just going back up through the devastation. This here is another edge of the lounge. You can kind of make out. In fact, there's the gymnasium. There was a little bit of deck, I think, like a bench, right? Between, that then went up to the raised lounge roof, and this would have been the wall around that raised lounge roof. It's just this crazy. There's so much to see here. Even just with these kind of low-res versions of the scans, too. I mean, again, things I never realized is just how bad the aft portion of the bow is destroyed. I always ask myself, like, why haven't they tried to go into the lounge, you know? Why haven't they tried to go into some of these rooms? Well, that's because there aren't rooms to go into anymore. It's just completely gone. I think we're nearly done with the bow now. Been here about 40 minutes at least. Seen a lot of the ship. There's more I can point out to, like some of the fans that are still intact. But I think I want to get to the stern here soon. Let me go back to the very front of the bow one more time. I think we didn't spend too much time around like the well deck, that area. We'll look there a little more. Also, yes, the music in the background is the remastered version of the Titanic Adventure Out of Time soundtrack that we have in Titanic Voyage. It was done by Andrew Yu, however you know him. He goes by many names. And I highly recommend looking him up. I think his channel is just Titanic Adventure Out of Time OST remastered or something like that. If you Bear, I'm sure you can find his channel and link to it. They're great though. Great remixes. I think he's going to try and get back to making the rest of the songs. Now, what is that? That looks like a heater or something right there. I point at it, it's too bright to see. But that looks like a heater or maybe a lantern or something that's just fallen here from somewhere else. It's really crazy, the debris that just rained down on the deck just ended up here. So down in the cargo hatches, you'd have the open space right there, which I know they've been able to explore pretty freely in the wreck. This side of the well deck is where the Iceberg, as it scraped alongside, dropped off big chunks of ice that passengers then started to play soccer with, and kicking it all around, right around the deck here. Obviously, the mast has completely collapsed. You can see some interesting stuff with the mast, too, though. I think it... Football, sorry. Use the British name. I think you're right. I think that is a heater from B-Deck. Which is crazy. Yeah, like along here you can see the mast has kind of split open. Well, somewhere with it, at least. Oh no, back here. You can see a little run of piping. Not actually piping. That was the line for the electrical circuit that had a bunch of light bulbs alongside it, I believe, to light up the interior, because they would get up to the crow's nest by climbing up the interior and coming out here through an opening. And so, since it was such a long climb, they had lighting in there, obviously. You can see some of the wiring for those lights. I don't have too much more to say. What's this? This looks like part of the mast as well, maybe, or something. Why is it such a jumbled mess over here? It's almost as if part of the mast scraped up alongside the deck here and came to a rest here and just left all the railing that it scooped up with it piled up here in the corner. I'd never noticed that before. That's crazy. Because, I mean, the railings are intact here. Oh, that's what we can do. Let's look for the fallen railing real quick near the bow. See if we can spot where it landed in the mud below. Oh, I don't see it. Either the scan didn't capture it, or it's buried in the mud. Because obviously the mud shifts and moves, so stuff like that probably becomes covered and uncovered often. Oh no, there it is, I think. Right there. That's definitely a bit of railing buried in mud. Look at that. It would line up with something that had fallen right from there. How about that? There it is. It's the fallen railing. Well, I am ready, I think, to go to the stern. Once again, I'm going to first quickly grab all of the objectives, and then we'll really explore. And I think as I'm doing that, you'll notice straight away that the stern is in a much, much worse state. Also, yes, I use Honor and Glory a lot. In fact, one of the fun things I've done with this game is directly referencing pictures I take in this game with pictures from Honor and Glory. That's how I've been able to find some of the remnants of some of the spaces on board. Especially here in the stern.
That wasn't bad at all.
Inlets are over here. And right off the gate, we're at the very aft portion of the stern, which is a wreck. We will definitely come back here. There's a lot to see here in the stern. almost overwhelming, honestly. I remember I just kind of drifted around for like an hour staring at things, just wondering what any of it even was. Because the stern is in such a state of devastation and absolute ruin that it's really hard to tell what anything is. Now, I have found some really cool stuff here, but you can just get a sense, just even from this, like, sidewards portion, that there's not much here anymore. The condenser inlets, I know, are somewhere around here. Another reason to quickly try and get out and scan these things is just so it stops beeping at me constantly. Where are they? Are they on another side? And I did so many runs to try and just quickly find where the objects are. I think it's somewhat randomized. But every now and then I get one that I just don't know. Flying over the stern now. Here's the remnants of a crane that I'm scanning for this objective.
That was smooth.
Just crazy. Absolutely insane how no how unrecognizable so much of it is. Part that stands out to me the most from my time here at the stern is that every now and then, though, you see something very recognizable. Like this here is the main mast. I guess most people know it as the aft mast. Still very intact. Against all the odds, with all of the devastation, somehow that itself is still largely intact. Makes you wonder, like, how? How does that even happen? Now, we're gonna scan the condenser inlets, and then we'll scan the engine, and then I guess we'll start from the engines and make our way aft. Because again, I know it looks like there's not anything recognizable in all of this mess, but I have found some stuff that I think is really cool here in the stern. But it literally looks like just a bomb went off, and I guess in a way, with an implosion from all the air, it kind of did. Yeah, the stern section imploded. So when the stern section sank, it had a lot more air in it. Where are these condenser inlets? Oh, there they are. When the stern section imploded, it had a lot more air in it.
It looks super easy.
And the result of that is that as the pressure grew outside, the inside just imploded. But that's not all. It spiraled, I think, as it was going down in a circular motion like that. That kind of had a lot of water pressure over the outer decks that tore bits of decking and the deck houses off. It obviously had the damage from the breakup, and then it slammed directly into the bottom of the ocean. I think even harder than the bow section because of how much weight these engines are. And it was just completely devastated from everything. And then it has farther collapsed over time, too. I know when they found the stern section originally, it wasn't quite as bad as it is now.
Team of elite ROV professionals any day.
We've gotten all the objectives, so now we can actually enjoy, I say. We can better take in our surroundings. How about? So these here, first of all, are the remnants of the engines, which are still mounted in place and standing very recognizable today. Somewhere in this mess would have been the steam pipes I mentioned earlier. I don't think that detail has gotten scanned though. It kind of ends there, you can see. But the engines themselves are still here. You can see some of the catwalks between the engines still too. I mean, they're warped and dangling, of course, but there are still remnants of those. You can see the bottom of the ship. You can see the plating that would have been the floor of the engine room. Then even beyond, you can see the keel. It all was formed beneath it. Here you can even see a portion of the keel sticking up. Forget what this is called, but this was like a stabilizer. This is on the bottom of the ship, pretty close to the bottom at least, kind of jutting out like this, and it would help keep the ship from rolling so much in the open ocean. Kind of see the structure of that here. Stabilizer fin, that's it. This here would be the edge of the engine room that would have had some other kinds of machinery mounted. Most of it's kind of ripped off now, though. Completely collapsed in on itself, too. You see bits of piping and other machines. And here's the hull itself. Wires dangling from above. Oh, it's really hard to point stuff out. Oh, the tops of the engines, I think, look really cool. They're still very intact. It's hard to point stuff out because of the state it's all in. We're gonna try. We're gonna do our best. So, moving aft of here. Yeah, this is aft. Moving aft of here, we have this gaping hole here. And what this gaping hole would have been was the fourth funnel. The fourth funnel, unlike the others, was a dummy funnel. Didn't actually vent anything from the boilers. It would just vent exhaust from the engines and let some fresh air down below. You can see some of the remnants of the hole where it once stood. All the deckhouse around it is completely crumbled and gone. Yeah, I'm glad that you showed up. Thanks to everyone who showed up. There's a lot of people. I know I'm not really having much time to properly engage with the chat, but it means a lot to come back and have so many people show up. It's great. So, I just said there's none of the deckhouse still standing, but I think I'm wrong, actually. I think this is a portion of deckhouse. On the stern, you have to look for very little things like this. Just the outlines of what once could have been structures that have now collapsed. I think that is part of the frame of the deckhouse right there. So everything here has kind of collapsed down this direction, right? Like down into the side. And it's sort of slid off of where it should be down along the side. Which means that even though this would have surrounded the fourth funnel, it's now kind of off to the right of it, which makes it way harder to identify where anything is. In fact, yeah, look here, there's more of the frame of that structure right here, I think. So there are still bits you can recognize if you stare long enough. Yeah, I do need to show what realistic looks like. Remind me again in a bit, because I probably will forget. Yeah, the fourth funnel connected to the restaurant galley. And I think the main galley too. I think you're right. I want to go down off to the side here where literally a giant portion of the side of the ship is just completely fallen off. Because that has spilled out some interesting things. So, stepping back again real quick, having a look at the plans. If we go to the stern and go down all the way around, so the engine room itself, right, is right here. And aft of that is the turbine engine room. So, again, let's orient ourselves, right? The engines are right there, mounted where they actually were, so we know for sure that's the front of the engine room. So I'm orienting myself on the other screen too. I know I'm talking like you can see it, but so that's the engine room. Then this here would be the turbine engine room, which means that these bits that have imploded off are from like along here. The restaurant stores and probably some of them back here too. The different refrigerated holds, right? So let's go back to the game now so I can show you what I was muttering about. So there's the engine right there, which means the turbine engine room would have been right around here, which again makes sense because it's in line with funnel 4. Which means that this portion over here probably would have been those refrigerated holds. And blown out over here would be elements of those refrigerated holds, right? Especially down there. So what I think's real interesting is there's absolutely evidence of that. This thing here, I don't know what this is. I'm really curious what this larger structure here is, but oh, I've said there's evidence and I forget where the evidence is. I promise I'll find the evidence. Just bear with me. Here's an interior wall with the portholes still attached, though. Who knows what deck this was? I'm sure there's a way to tell, but then here's where it exploded outwards. I think it's on the other side. Yeah, it is. I see it. Okay. So over here, what do we see? We see what looks to me like some kind of water tank. Could have held anything, I guess. I'm calling it a water tank. But the real evidence is right here. Right here, you can see curling pipes half buried in the sand and sediment. And these pipes would have run refrigeration fluid through them. They're curved like that so they can cover a lot of surface area so that each of them can contribute to keeping one of the holds cold. I think even in the Honor and Glory video they recently did about the potato room, you can see these kinds of pipes in the potato room, which also was a refrigerated hold. So the tanks, the refrigerated pipes over here, there's a lot of them too. There's another one there. All of this got blown out of the bottom here, which I think means that the bottom here was around those refrigerated holds. So I thought that was really cool to see. Kind of like radiator pipes, yeah. The Honor and Glory video about Potato Room goes into it a lot more. But I think Basically, they would pump cold fluid through those pipes that would then sort of freeze the outer portions of the pipes, creating a more chilled effect in the room. This is, I think, one of the gangway doors, or it's the condenser. I think it's the condenser. Yeah, that's definitely a condenser cover. So they would take water in for the boilers through the condensers, and then somewhere else, probably there, I think they would pump it out. And this is actually then, that would mean this is probably the condenser outlet that spewed water out and pushed lifeboat, I think 13 back aft into boat 15, because this was sticking out of the water at the time. It's another way to kind of orient yourself with where exactly you are on the stern. I'm very glad you could join. And of course, if you have to leave, the video will be saved on my channel. You can watch the rest anytime. So we see some interesting stuff in the mud here. So, okay. So assuming that I'm right, which I'm pretty confident I am, right? That this was the interior of those refrigerated holds that got blown outwards. We start to see a bunch of third class or crew tile spread about in sand and sediment. What really baffles me, though, like there's some more. I don't know what this structure was. I'm guessing, though, this came from somewhere around the broken boat deck, because you can see some things near here that to me look like they're lounge windows, just based on the patterns here and the height. I think these are windows from the lounge that have somehow ended up here, intermixed with through tiles. And this weird structure here that is a portion of the outer hull, because here you can see one of the ventilated portholes that were often common in cruise spaces. Completely on its side, which would mean that would have been the floor, that little chunk there. Yeah, I think this is part of a deck house that just got lifted up and smashed around this entire area when the ship broke in half. Which is insane. Again, that it just drifted and smashed into the ground here. You can see here even more of the third class or second class tiles, right? So wherever this came from had to be a room that had those kinds of tiles that probably was near the lounge, assuming I'm right that these are lounge windows. So I bet you could figure out exactly what this was with enough detective work. I still haven't, though. All the copies of futility. Let's go back towards the ship now. I think we've spent long enough around here. So the stern section, I think, is most recognizable here along this portion. You can still make out windows. So this would have been on C deck. These are the enclosed second-class promenade windows. Here is an open gangway door for that same enclosed second-class promenade. On the other side would be the library, though it's too collapsed, I think, to possibly ever get in there. But yeah, the library would have sat right in there on C deck. And seeing this always makes me wish they would just send in a small ROV just to see what's in there. right? Like, what if a portion of it is still intact? It probably isn't, but... This here is the underside of the boat deck. It lifted up and smashed down, and this lifeboat David here is, or the evidence. Is it David or is it David? I don't know. Honestly, I've never had to say that word out loud enough to learn. But yeah, the fact it's here on the underside of what looks to me like upper deck, I think means that this is just a giant swath of the promenade that lifted up and slammed down here. There's more to see. This here is the crane that would be on the A deck promenade. So yeah, let's orient ourselves again real quick, right? So here's a crane. Here's the framework of the second class stairwell. Here's some boat deck in between. I have figured out what everything here is, and I want to show you. Because to me, this is one of the cooler things. So back to the plans we go for a moment. So, looking up here. So the crane I was just pointing out is this crane here on A deck. Right over here is the starboard veranda and palm court. Directly on the other side of it is the second class stairwell that runs up one more deck to the boat deck landing, right? And somewhat aft of all of this is where the mast is. On the other side is the other palm court, and just ahead of all of this is the smoke room. This is a pretty, I guess, famed area, right? I mean, even beneath this, then you get into the Cafe Parisien and the restaurant. So, yeah, there's a lot of rooms of great interest here. And of course, most of them are completely gone. But there is still some stuff to see. So here's that A-deck crane. You're just gonna have to take my word on this one, because I did a lot of cross-referencing the Honor and Glory demo. I figured this much out. This here is the underside of the A-deck promenade. You can see two of the lights that would have been used to light the promenade at night right here. And this ripped up and off of this steel frame right here. And where you see this steel frame suddenly have two beams going up this way is where the wall of the starboard palm court would have been, right along this beam here. So the other side here, that's of course too collapsed to make out any detail, is, I guess, all that's remaining of that starboard palm court, because the boat deck itself has crumbled downwards and completely collapsed onto that room. This here is the boat deck. It has collapsed inwards. It is now basically level with A deck. I mean, it's crazy. Here is the second class stairwell, which is still very recognizable. And you can see the upper portion of it has collapsed inwards, of course, so you can't really see the stairs anymore. But you can still see the elevator gear that's sat on top. Aft a bit would be the end of that boat deck promenade. It then goes back down to A deck, where the mast is, that sat over the aft second class stairwell. On this side here, once I turn around, This here is the B deck promenade around the second class smoking room. I was actually very surprised when I first found this because this is still very intact, all things considered. You can see where the housing around the aft second class staircase would be right there. It would come down, and you can see this wall here that would have been around the second class smoking room, and I think around the bar in particular. You can even see some of the frame of where that curved inwards towards the entrance to the second class smoking room. You can see the remnants of a cowl vent that's sat here. One of the cranes would have been up there on A deck. It's sort of collapsed downwards now, though, I think. And you can still see some of the remnants of the cargo hatch that would have been right here, too. So this whole little portion of second class is still pretty much intact, and in a way, it's almost all that's left of it. This here would have been the aft wall of that stairwell. You can see where the window frames are still. You can see too how it's just collapsed in on itself entirely. Yeah, the second class smoking room then, based on all of that, would have been right over here. But of course, you can't see any of it. It's completely collapsed inwards as everything above has fallen down onto it. What we can see, though, if we come this way more, it's another one of those really cool things that I found. This little wall here is still quite intact the whole way across. You can see how it bends halfway through. Then right here is what looks like a grated porthole cover. Or maybe even a fan vent or something, right? I think I know what this is based on where we are. Let's go back to the plans to help make this point. So going up here, you have this wall here along this edge of the palm courts. It then runs over the smoke room bar and palm court pantry. And it has two windows on it, two portholes that are situated on the upper layer right here. They are side lights. In fact, they're skid lights, whatever. Skid lights, whoops. Let me zoom all the way out. Skid lights that look into the bar right along the aft portion of this raised roof over the smoking room. If we look back here, I think that's exactly what this is. I think this is the aft raised promenade over the smoking room, a portion of it, with a porthole, and you can kind of even see there, it looks like there was the framework of another porthole that's completely imploded. Which means that everything back here then would have been the raised portion over the smoking room. It looks like other bits of decking have peeled up onto it and smashed down, but it would be here. And this opening here, I'm assuming, would also look down into the smoking room, which would be on this side of this wall. So this is probably the closest we would ever get to seeing remnants of the smoking room. If I zoom out a bit, or drift up, I guess, you can maybe make out the frame there a bit better. Because that there is where the fourth funnel was, which means all of this is that space that would have been in between. And it's sort of slid down this way, too, you can kind of make out. Got a piece of coal. several pieces of coal, actually. Gifted multiple over the course of my life. So this here is where the deck also just exploded out when the ship slammed into the bottom. That's where the main mast collapsed over to the side. See another lifeboat davit right there. This would have been a portion of the boat deck then. And some of the framework for the smoking room roof, I think, is collapsed down here. Probably even some of the smoking room itself collapsed down to here. Kind of just on top of this bit of broken out decking. Or broken out exterior wall. Here, I think, is a gangway door that's burst out. I'm sure you could figure out where exactly that was located if you did enough research. Curious to me is out here you have all three of the cargo cranes, except for the one still mounted back there on A deck. There's one cargo crane here, another crane here, and the third one there. I wonder how they all ended up on this side. It's kind of crazy. Then we make our way towards the aft portion of the stern. So let's orient ourselves a little again. So this here was that B-deck promenade for second class that I pointed out is still very intact. This here would have been the wall leading up to that. You can see the ladder there where the... on the other side of the ladder would have been the staircase leading up. Kind of weird to think about that there's a staircase over a ladder. That's because the staircases could be removed, I think. I'm pretty sure they could be removed and stowed elsewhere, and the ladders were more permanent fixtures, as evidenced by the fact it's still there. This would have led into the... Really gets hard to tell. There would have been a door somewhere here, that might be it, that led into the C-deck promenade around second class. Just looking this way, just looking at the wreckage and how flat everything is. Like, it's kind of crazy to think about, right? But that there is the stern, which was on B-deck level. So that is B-deck. And we turn around, and nothing is taller than that on this side of the ship. Everything is collapsed below the level of B-deck. That is one cargo hatch, I think. It's really hard to see because so much is collapsed onto and into it. But this here is a more noticeable cargo hatch. The aftermost hatch. And this would have been the aft well deck then. It's for third class passengers. The third class stairwell is over here. This would have been the wall that led into the stairwell, which would have been propped up, but the staircase itself is here. And it has collapsed in somewhat. So you can see some of the third class tiles there, just how you know this is the staircase. So it's collapsed down at least one deck, but I want to know what else is down there, because that's a very enticing space to me. I wish that someone could go down into there and just see if there's anything intact beyond, you know, because if you go off to the side of the stern, the aft portion of the stern still looks pretty well intact. Impressive how much I can identify. Thanks. I spent a lot of time looking at the stern in particular. That's a portion of the side railing that would have been around these stairs too. closer look, you can see that it's a bit of railing bent down and inwards. They had railings obviously around the stairs, so that's, I guess, the last thing really left identifiable about the stairs itself. What color are the tiles? Really hard to say because it's too low res to make out that detail. However, I've seen other tiles that are clearly red, and I'm gonna guess that these are not red but more green, given the fact that there's not more color. You can take a look over here and see red. There's some red right there, for example, but there's no red on those at all. I think they're green. And even up here you can see a few more too, and I don't see any red either, so I still think they're green. Right, so where are we? So that's the third class stairwell directly beneath us. Oh, there's another. I didn't even notice that. There's another rail, another handrail for the stairs. I think this here... Yeah, this here is the wall that would have led into the third class general room. This would be a part of the wall facing forward within the general room. Which you can barely make out. I guess let me pull up the plans again, because we haven't really been back here yet. I can kind of trace out this this shape on the plans. So let's do that real quick. Whoa, not that. Okay. Dream looks funny, let me know. I accidentally dragged something I shouldn't have. So down here we can trace out that exact shape. See? 1, 2, 3. Which leads out along the wall of the general room here, right next to the staircase that we're looking at. Means the general room would be here, and the smoking room is on the other side of the staircase. Let's have another look. 1, 2, 3. Exactly like I thought. And then the tiles would also imply this was the general room here. Obviously, though, there's nothing really left of it. Beyond that, there's some of the windows that would have been in there. But all of these rooms were so devastated when the stern imploded and smashed into the bottom. There's nothing left in them, sadly. You can see it on this side as well, here. That would have been part of the structure around the smoking room. Which means these would be portholes from the smoking room. Now, on this side, it's a jumbled mess. It's crazy, because you have the smoking room is now sitting on a bunch of collapsed decks. Itself is sitting on, I think, the exterior wall of the ship, if I'm seeing this right. It looks like that to me. There's some kind of grating in there too. I don't know where that came from. Like a hatch cover right there. Wonder if there were any hatches around here. I don't know. Then we go aft of here and get towards the stern itself. Don't have my chat up. I got a little too lost there. Yeah, right? Like, the stern is such a wreck, but there's structure of stuff you can still make out. When I first flew around this, I thought there was no way I'd ever be able to identify anything, but the more you do, the more you can find little things that point towards what should have been there. So, what we're looking at here is the wall, or the ceiling, that would have been over these spaces, which is peeled up and back and down over the stern. Even then, though, there's still some stuff that you can make out. Like right there. Right there is one of the... Oh, man. What are they called? Let's see if the plans say. Capstan, that's it. But there's one of the capstans. There's some of the outer portions of the stern. I know one of the things they have identified recently are these. The Honor and Glory team, I think, actually was able to identify what these things sitting here are, and they are galley furnaces. Which should not at all be here. The galleys aren't even remotely close to here. But they drifted down and just came to rest right here after all the destruction. So the steering gear... That's an interesting question, right? And I had that exact same question too. I wonder what that was. That's imploded. Look at that. That's something that was filled with air, and then it burst inwards as it imploded, and it's just still imploded here. That's interesting. I'd never even noticed that before. So if we drift on down here. The scans don't have enough detail, right? But I want to say that it looks to me like it's partially collapsed, but I also think that the steering gear probably is in there. I mean, because let's go to the outer edge of the ship here real quick. If we look at it from... Whoa. Crash. If we look at it from this side, the structure here is still fairly sound. Like the steering gear would be right inside of there, and this area itself is quite well preserved as far as the rest of the stern goes. You even see some of the portholes that would lead into the steering gear room. I have to imagine it's still in there and still accessible. And I have to also imagine more of this aft portion of the stern is accessible too. I really wish they would try and get in there more. I know there's nothing really but a bunch of third-class cabins, but it would be so cool to get any video out of the interior of the stern at all. Might have been the smoking room bar. Oh, look at that again now you mentioned that. But while we're here, this is a propeller, obviously. This propeller is really cool because everyone who talks about the switch theory, right? The Olympic and Titanic were switched. It can kind of be disproven here because if you look really closely, and it's hard to make out, I might have to activate sonar mode, which might be a little jump scare. Be ready for a loud sound if you've just been relaxing or falling asleep. You can kind of barely make out the stamping 401 right there on the propeller. which was Titanic's number assigned in the yard, right? 401. So you can say all you want that Titanic and Olympic were switched if you're one of those conspiracy theorists, but the evidence is down here on the bottom of the ocean against you. Realistic mode. Let me fly to the back of the stern and just have one look forward from the very back. Then I'll swap to realistic mode and show you. Because, yeah, obviously this is way brighter than it is in real life, right? I mostly have been exploring in this setting because I want you all to actually be able to see stuff. Let's swap over to realistic mode. Oh, yeah, wait. Look at this again first. So, based on how this folded up and aft, this would have been the portion closest to promenade. You can even see some of the structure here, I think, of the wall of some room that's broken off. I bet I could cross-reference that, right? There's some pipes right here. A bunch of wires. Whatever that is. There's a deck light, so that would have been outside. You know what? I think you're right. I think you're absolutely right in that this is part of the smoke room bar for third class. That's really cool. Now I've got something else I can spend half an hour trying to figure out later on what all of these weird structures on the bottom of this came from. Or I guess now it's the top, not the bottom. But that, yeah, I absolutely think you're onto something there about that being the smoke room bar. Glad you were able to make it, Daniel. Glad everyone that joined was able to make it. Again, this is a lot more turnout than I expected for a return stream like this after a while, so I'm glad that there's still a lot of people very interested in hearing what all I have to say about this ship and the games that I play and stuff. I'll definitely try and do more of it. Maybe it's a good time to return to like an Honor and Glory stream or something. It's been a good while, right? So I'm gonna start rounding it out now. I want to go into realistic mode, like Bear's been asking a lot, just to really give you a sense of just how dark it is. And I don't even think realistic mode is the most realistic it could be. I think it's even darker in real life, right? But this at least gives you some sense of just how murky and dark it is down here. And I've tried exploring in this mode, and honestly, it creeps me out. It really kind of creeps me out seeing stuff just emerging from the darkness when you can barely see anything around you. This is more akin to how dark it actually is. Like drift back towards that propeller that we know is just right there, but it can just now barely start to see it. Go back to the bow, yeah. C-deck portholes in first class. Yeah, we can have one last look around the bow. Create the path of the opening scene of the movie. To be a little crab. It is their home now. I mean, it's kind of something that often gets overlooked with all the tragedy, right? But I think they say Titanic is like home to so many unique organisms of life now. Life that could probably only really exist down here in this environment. Alright, see, look at this, okay? I'm like starting to go on tangents now, right? But That is looking into the sea deck promenade, second class, and the scan doesn't capture all the detail, but it looks wide open to me, right? Like, can you really not just send an ROV in there a little bit more and see what you find? Like, the library's walls should be, like, right there. It's probably collapsed, there's probably nothing left, but I just want to know. One last look over the stern. Here's the A deck crane again. Here's the second class stairwell. This would be the raised roof over the smoking room. Leads back into funnel. And down here are the engines. It's harder to see anything in the darkness. Really creepy. I don't like exploring in this mode. It scares me. There's something very eerie about ocean depths like this and things in them that should not belong. Well, I think now we've also spent about an hour exploring the stern. I will go back to the bow. I'll do it unrealistic, I guess. Just to really have the approach at the bow in the darkness. I think that's a cool shot. But then I will look at the open D-deck windows, one last fly around the bow, and we'll probably end it there. As it's been almost 2 hours by now. There it is. It's just so ominous. I don't like it in realistic mode. I'm gonna ignore the objectives too. I think I can turn that sound off at least, though. It'll probably kill off all the other sound too, but that's fine. You know how audible it was to begin with. This kind of is the path from the movie, right? They found the bow and then just drift up and over it. There's another plaque that was left. I mean, again, I need to remind myself every now and then too that I'm not just playing some game. This isn't the recreation of the ship, right? Like, this is a real scan from the real ship on the bottom of the sea. And the fact that it's explorable in any form is crazy. It's only $25 on Steam if you want to get it yourself. If you're at all interested in the ship, I guarantee you'll spend many, many hours exploring it. And next year, I'll probably return to this game because they have plans to eventually add in the debris field as well, and possibly even connect the two levels. But that will be worth its own exploration, I think. So I'll definitely return to this next year whenever they complete the game. It's in early access now, so I'm really interested in seeing where they end up taking it. So D-deck windows would be down on this side. I mean, they're on both sides, but let's descend D-deck and try and see what we see. This is B-deck. This is C-deck. Here is D-deck. Oh, there are some open windows. Look at that. 1, 2, 3 open in a row. Hey, there's a shattered one too. Obviously, it's impossible, I think, to tell. Oh man, you know what? Hang on. I didn't want to do this. I still kind of don't. Whoa, no. That was wrong. We want to change that. I might want to count portholes. I'm gonna count portholes. Let's do this. Let's do this experiment together. We can end on this maybe. So I want to try and have a look at the windows that supposedly ice fell through, like we were talking about earlier in the stream. So to do that, I'm going to have to speculate a bit, because I don't know which cabin the passenger was in. But it has to be on this side of the ship. If we can find the 2 entrance doors, we can figure out which portholes are from the corridors. I did it again. Which portholes are from the corridors, count the portholes until we find them and see. I'm guessing it would have to be this forward one, probably, but I guess it could have been any, really, so... Let's do this. Let's do this little experiment together. I'm not going to keep tabbing back to the map. I'm just going to count them out myself. If I keep tabbing back to the map, it'll be way too unwieldy. But to start, let's find those 2 gangway doors, which I think I can already see up there. My buck now is in D15. Ooh, coming in clutch. That means I think I could see exactly which porthole we want to try and target. Look at this one. This one's just wide open. See, I know passengers left their windows open sometimes, because even on a really cold night like that one was, it could get pretty stuffy in your rooms. And these windows, if you didn't know, were designed such that you could open them and angle them so that you could more easily blow the wind into your cabin, right? The idea being you can angle it just so that it catches the wind and really funnels it into your room. So this here is the forward entrance. Means this window here for D35. This is D37. I wonder if that was a known occupied cabin, because if it was, whoever was the occupant probably left their window open. So, next, this here is our first corridor, and that looks intact to me. Obviously, we're going to have to make some just educated guesses eventually. So, next, D33, intact. D31, intact. D27, intact. And D29, intact but open. This here would be a corridor, right? That's partially opened. Interesting the way it's opened too. So obviously any of these could have opened, I think, from just slamming into the ocean, but if you think of it from the perspective of trying to angle it so you can get air into your room, like, that makes sense, right? Because this is the front of the ship, and the wind would be blowing this way. But the way that this one is opened wouldn't really blow anything inside at all. It would blow air away. Which just has me wondering if that was opened that way by someone on purpose, or... But yeah, that's exactly what I'm wondering too. Like, how many of these were opened before the sinking? How many opened from the water flow? But that one's interesting to me. That's the corridor between D29 and D25. Let's keep going. D25. This here is D23. That's D19. The thing is, a lot of them aren't opened. A lot of them are closed. Which, if a lot of them had opened from the water, I think it would be more frequent. This one's shattered. D21. And this one's opened. Isn't that interesting? This is opened and almost looks like it has some damage on it if you look close, right? Like it's cracked, and I mean, this one is completely shattered. And this one here is the window between D21 and D17. And a D17 being right here. And D17... Hang on, I'm trying to make sure I've got this right. D17... No, it's that, isn't it? I think I've lost count. I think this is it. Man, now I gotta count again. I stopped and talked too much along the way. I want to make sure that I get this right. One more time. No talking about what I'm doing, just counting straight down until we get to the relevant window. I'm sure the comments are... Here we go. Last time. D35, D37, corridor, D33, D31, D27, D29, corridor, D25, D23, D19, D21, corridor. Makes sense because there's a double window right here. I feel like there's a window that's buried somewhere that I'm missing. It would make sense that it's this window. Here, let me show you what I'm seeing on the plans, right? Because there's one window here that is very buried in sediment, right? And I'm thinking there's another one that is back there somewhere too. Because this is broken like she would have implied. Then we go from there, there's one window, then there's two windows directly side by side, right? So let's come back here. I'm doing like live archaeology right now. So here's the cabin window closest to D15, which is her room. And this is a double window right here. Then there's one more cabin here, and then the corridor right here. So let's look back. Even my cats are getting interested in this one. So right here is the broken window, followed by what would be that one cabin window, followed by two cabin windows side by side. Meaning I think this broken window is the one that got broken by the iceberg, which would be the cabin. or the corridor rather, the corridor between the two cabins. It's gotta be. This has to be it. That means there's one that's just buried somewhere back that way. Which means that she's absolutely right, and that when the iceberg scraped along the side of the ship, it would have broken this window. That's cool. Now it makes you wonder about this open window here, I think, because was it open? I don't know. I really wonder if these windows were open before or after it sank. But this has to be it. This has to be the window that was broken. Her cabin corridor that she mentioned got broken by the iceberg, which is crazy to see that that's actually here, and there's evidence of it right here on the wreck. Wow, that's cool. Live archaeology. Yeah, right? Because I always thought it was an exaggeration that a window got shattered. I would have thought that would cause more of an uproar, right? Um, but it literally did. And that's also interesting because that's on the forward B deck corridor, which a lot of passengers reportedly walked by. Right? So, because I think like the Wideners maybe or Mr. Thayer or someone, he reports that he came to this staircase here, which looks down towards the squash court below, in the mail hold, all down this staircase, and that they could see water pooling up at the bottom of that staircase. And that's also right next to a broken porthole where there would have been ice that had fallen inwards. You wonder if they even saw that, or if there was any kind of fuss going on about it, and if that maybe added some to their initial assessment that something was really wrong. Man, that's so cool. I'll take one look at the windows on the other side too, because apparently some of them are also open, and then I'll probably end it there. My voice is getting tired from all this talking. Yeah, a lot of passengers will take their testimony and make it sound more dramatic than it was, or give their story a little more character and life after the fact. So, whenever you can find something on the real wreck like that, it's really cool. I think a lot of these windows are broken simply because everything in this side got bent so much around here. Which then makes you wonder, like, these are open. Did these open up because of the bending of the hull? Seems like there's a lot more broken and open on this side. That's interesting. Here's the open gangway door. I would guess on this side, though, it's mainly because of the bending and breaking of the hull that these windows have opened or shattered. The other side, though, I think seemed a little more preserved as it might have been when the ship sank. Wonder if E-Deck has any broken ones? I don't know. The E-Deck windows are harder to see. What storyline that I had no part in, didn't see at all on board, did I enjoy the most? Story that I really wasn't involved in at all. Ooh, that's tough to say. That's actually a really difficult question. There's so many, I'm trying to remember them all, first of all. think it's gotta be. I don't even know if I can really give it to any one person. I think third class overall. I saw some really good stuff going on in third class. Like everyone down there was great. I can't even remember their names. Like Finnegan Ward might be one. There were a couple others. I didn't really get to interact with anyone in third class, but it looked like it was really stellar this year, and I was very jealous I hadn't really planned a proper third class story. Interesting, because none of these look broken at all. I mean, I guess this is beyond the point of the, whoa, almost hit the hull. I guess this is beyond the point of the collision, and everything forward of here is so broken that it's going to just be shattered. What is that? Oh, it's just a hull plate. I thought it was a grating of some kind. Yeah, third class. Third class really was a standout, and I'm so jealous I couldn't be part of it that much. It's just sheared away into the mud up here. Third class in the game is always so hit or miss, right? It's really dependent on having other good players there. But whenever you get that, it's so much fun. I really, really like third class. My favorite area on board, though, I will say, is becoming the crew. I love my pantry up on A deck, which sadly is not intact here in the wreck at all. Kind of just drifting around at this point. If we're talking about the voyage, I'm guessing we're nearly done. We're reminiscing. Pantry gang. Yep. Pantry is where it's at. Look at the devastation of some of these forward cabins, too. Whoa. Dead sub. Uh-oh, I destroyed a sub.
Discouraged, you can try again.
Oh, I think I ran out of time. I forgot that I'm on a time limit. Or maybe I, maybe I did something wrong. I don't know. I was trying so hard not to destroy a sub. Yeah, we imploded. Pulled a Titan. I did have one person down in steerage. Very lightly. I wasn't really playing out a major storyline there. And we did escape the flooding bow section, and that's always a rush, right? And then having to find your way to the boat deck. If you actually roleplay those things out in third class, it's so much fun. Very chaotic. To get James, Cameron, and Bill Paxton to recover what's left. At least it was in an easy spot to recover, just sitting there along the promenade. Fun to hear that people have different routes they take while trying to get out of steerage. This promenade's in pretty bad shape. Whenever they stopped to take that in, but so much of what was above has fell down on top of it. There's some pretty dedicated groups of people that play engineers and do exactly that each year. I don't know if I have the constitution for that. Yeah, I think what happened here is the first funnel fell this way, smashed some of the deck. What I don't understand is how this came to be here in that scenario. Because this would have gotten ripped up off of like over there and come forward and landed here. It is pretty weird. That one's perfectly fine. Yeah, no, I was part of that fireman group too, and escaping, going boiler room by boiler room, because we lost people along the way, and things just slowly deteriorated more and more. And then we eventually got dismissed by one of the engineers. It was hectic. It was like we started off as a group of, I don't know, 10 or so, and by the end, there were just two. I definitely didn't expect this to turn into chatting and reminiscing about the voyage. I don't mind that. A little more since people seem to be enjoying it before I stop. Firemen were more fun than you'd expect as long as you have other firemen there too. Because you can roleplay a lot of their like downtime in the bow too. So we got all those rooms there. Speaking of firemen, you can see some of the fiddly events around the funnels still too. There's one. These vents would go all the way to the bottom. Can't see inside with the scans, obviously. It doesn't go that far, but they go all the way down, and you could also climb them all the way up. I know a number of the firemen we had in game actually escaped through a fiddly vent in the end, I think. Need to figure out some kind of limit I can impose. Like we'll stop at this time or something, because I could just keep drifting around and chatting for a while if I'm not careful. I just found it so weird that there's this fan or water tank or whatever this is, kind of on top of the fiddly here, but then sends pipes down through it as well. You can see that in the Honor and Glory demo from the inside. And don't know what it's for, but it's there. At this point, we're mostly talking about the voyage, or speculating about the nature of portholes on the side of the bow. Coming to some fun conclusions there. What do I make of Grand Voyage? I would love to stream that when it's out, actually. I am looking forward to that, and definitely when Carpathia gets added to it, I would love to try and reach out to Mike Brady and see if he would be willing to let us maybe get some images from his game for ours. Have not at all started that conversation now, though, but yeah, no, I love that there's more projects like that in the works now. I know there's also Tom's Lusitania project that's been in the works for a number of years. If that ever does come out, I'll happily play that too. Yeah, this is pretty relaxed. I love almost always near the end of the streams we just start chatting about the voyage or the ship or whatever, really. And there's always a lot of fun then. Just like I think someone once described it as like Titanic Voyage after dark or something. Like an exclusive club almost. I don't know that I'm interesting enough for that particularly, but people seem to like it, so I don't mind. What is this? Every now and then you just find something that really makes you stop and think. Because to me, that almost looks like the square frames you might have seen around the lounge corridor. I don't know how it would have gotten on this side of the ship, so I'm wondering now, maybe it's not one of the windows, B deck or A deck, that has popped out of its frame and fallen below. It probably is exactly that. But then it looks like it goes on beyond that. I don't know. I think it is a promenade window frame. I'm pretty sure it's a promenade window frame. You play next year in second class, I guarantee it'll be a lot of fun. We would love to have you there. That's an interesting view. That looks like the outer edge of the boiler rooms, some of the framing or something. Take my advice, Leah. Don't get into any collabs. Just leave it open, and if it seems like you might have the time, just register a secret character last minute and just join. I've heard a lot of people have done that this year with last minute secret characters, and they had a lot of fun with it. Actually, how far out can I go now? They definitely updated the game, because before I could barely come here before it told me I had to turn back. But like, what kind of views can I get out here now? It's crazy to see. I wonder what boiler room that is. You probably could figure out exactly which one, I'm sure. We'll have a honeymoon one day. Take you on a nice ship, a nice cruise. Is that an appealing thought right now? Honestly, I've had a few people come to me, who I will not say, obviously, because I want to keep their secret, but more than a few people have come to me afterwards and been like, By the way, I was this character, and it's been a lot of fun just having those kinds of interactions. I kind of want to keep some of my characters secret again. I always thought it was fun when you could. Wait, the steel's just bent here. It's wild. But I always thought it was a lot of fun whenever you just kept a secret like that, and then at the very end of the game came out like, by the way, I had a lot of fun playing alongside you this year as a so and so, and the people get really shocked that it's you. I miss some of those days. Lately, I'm pretty open with most of my characters. Yes, a married couple did meet in the game. That is true. It was without compromising too much of their personal life. I think it was someone from America and someone across the sea. They met in the game, and now they live together and are married. Is there another one too? It could be. It's hard to keep up with it sometimes. Yeah, it's crazy to think about sometimes. A little game that I got entangled with back in 2016, 15 really. I joined the team in 2016, and it's still every year a big part of my life and the lives of others. Not always perfect, but we do our best. Yeah, same. Every time I play, I emerge with like a new person I hadn't really spoken to before, and maybe we don't become like lifelong friends or anything like that, right? But I always end up talking to someone I never really did before, and at least for a couple months we have that in common, and then we see each other again next year in game, and it's like, oh, hey, good to see you again. It's a very unique opportunity and community, I guess. Hey, there's a plaque on this one too. I never noticed that. I wonder if it's documented what each plaque says. Because obviously, there's no way you can read it here. Daniel's currently wearing that. Since I've flown around here so long, I'm gonna go back to the stern one more time, and then we'll stop for real. I keep saying that. Almost done. It's almost done. We keep going back for more. Didn't look at the propeller on the left side. I should have a look. It says United States. I actually don't know as much about that as some people, but I think I do wish more of the historical ships of the world would get preserved instead of just getting scrapped. It feels like a lot of history is not really being respected these days. Wish we could see the center propeller. I always think about that whenever I'm flying around or looking at documentaries or anything of the sort. Really, I always just like, I wish I could see what's under the mud. Hazard over here. Yeah, I'm normally not a big fan of really fast in-game romances. I like to slow it down. I will say though, I've had a few years now where I've been like an anti-romance magnet in game. My characters, they just never, they become great friends with people, but that's all it ever is. Which is fine. I don't mind, but it's just funny. Always feels like everyone else around me is getting swept up in so many romantic plots, and there I am just like, oh, I'm so happy for you. My characters. Next year I should change that and try and proper in-game romance again. Based museum. Hmm. That's the pipe, the casing of the pipe that would have been over the smoking room fireplace. I think. Maybe I'm completely wrong. A guess. Yeah, Quinn. I think he definitely could have gotten into a romance if he wasn't so afraid of dragging other people down with his perceived shortcomings. The deck house? Beam and then another beam. The roof is lit off. There's another beam here too. I think that's part of the deck house that was around the funnel. No idea what part of the deck house though. We're on the topic of Voyage romances. It's definitely time to end it soon. You know we're getting into After Hours, Titanic Voyage. Oh, please do. The quirky, obscure ones are my favorites. Ones you just see them in a room and you just completely at a loss at what you're seeing. Even asleep yet. I know people say that my voice could lull people off to sleep, but definitely not the goal of the stream here. Yeah, there's more refrigerated piping right there. That's from farther aft, so that would be from the bigger refrigeration holds. I like to downplay. There's more tiles. Low res, but there's definitely tiles there. It's probably part of a second class floor. Ooh, the second-class tiles. It came from the lower decks, I would guess, based on everything else around here. Who knows? That could be my second-class cabin right there. How cool. I often downplay how much I know about the ship, but then I do something like this and I realize I maybe know more than I give myself credit for. What is that? Like a tank of some kind just buried in the mud. Whenever they add the debris field to the game next year and I come back to do another stream, like it's over. We're gonna spend 2 hours just staring at little things in the mud like this. Being like, what is this? Maybe then everyone will fall asleep. You're so right about that. The stern has all of my favorite public spaces. Just knowing that they're just buried and completely destroyed in this tangled mass of steel and linoleum tile and other things like that. It's very sad. Everything I'd really want to see in the wreck is just here. Imploded, collapsed. It's funny you should mention that. I have picked random items they found in the debris field and pretended it was my character. Like the Megalodon tooth necklace from a while back. I forget what storyline that was tied to, but it was part of something. Okay. Yeah, it would be great if they gave us a higher quality scan. Maybe they'll, for the final release with the debris field especially, maybe they'll find a way to up the quality of it. Because this is like awesome and amazing, but if it was even higher res, it would be crazy. But the fact they've done this at all, though, after hoarding wreck knowledge for so long, is just insane, too. What have we here? Absolutely no idea about this one. I think it might be too low res to find out. Thinking it's very similar to that one object on the other side, though. Right, we are definitely nearing the end, though, so I don't want to cut off all of the nice conversation going on right now, but I've definitely been talking for 2 hours now, so I'm nearing my limit of constantly speaking, at least. So I need to stop soon. Not just yet, but soon. That object I just was looking at on the other side, I think. No, this is much bigger, whatever this is. It's so hard to tell what you're looking at sometimes. Yeah, again, I'm really, really glad so many people showed up and so many people are still here, even after all this time. I definitely will do more streams. I don't know what they will be, or even when they will be. I know, again, like Grand Voyage with Mike Brady, that's one I definitely want to do. As this game gets updated and adds in the debris field and anything else that they do, I will definitely return to this as well. Do one more exploration. Plus, who knows, I might have found more interesting stuff by then. There's a number of other projects that I am passively interested in as well, so if they come into fruition, I may bring them. Of course, if Honor and Glory comes out with Project 401 in the foreseeable future, I will bring that. Might return to their latest demo again, just to see what's there. I often will walk around that after each voyage, but I haven't streamed it in a while. Probably some fun stuff I could point out there again too. Hey, that's a portion of a bench. Just make out the outer wall of it. That looks like some kind of big heavy iron door. That's interesting. Yeah. Anyway, so yeah, I don't know exactly when the next stream will be, but I have plans to do more, so hopefully not as long this time as it was before this one. And yeah, I guess it would be wrong of me not to thank everyone who played the Voyage this year again. I think a lot of people said it was the best Voyage they've had in a while, so I'm really glad, and from my perspective at least, probably one of the smoothest to play too. Very few technical issues, couple minor hiccups with jail, but I think in the end that was more funny than harmful, so yeah, all in all, great year. Thanks a lot for playing the game. I've had fun streaming this and will definitely stream more in the future. And it was also just nice talking with people again here. I guess I missed that more than I realized, but this is a very nice environment to just have very nice and friendly conversations with you all. So, yeah, definitely looking forward to the next stream. Scream? I don't know what I just said. Yes, they also posted a link to the remake music that's been playing in the background of the stream. His work is great. The closest we'll get to like high quality remastered versions of those tracks, I think. You can even hear it in the game, as you may have noticed. Yeah, go check it out if you can. And I am very glad that I had the chance to show you this. It's on Steam if you want to try it yourself. And like I mentioned before, if you're even passively interested in Titanic, I guarantee you'll spend a while just floating around here. And it's fun to explore it in the other lighting conditions too. Didn't really do much outside of this one that shows you everything, but yeah, there's a lot of value here, I think. So definitely check it out. And I think that's about it for now. Yes, so thanks to everyone again for showing up, and I hope that we'll meet again like this soon. Until next time.